I have a sickening obsession with Godzilla.
I'm an addict.
Alright, so when it comes to almost every Godzilla film, even with the ones that are objectively bad to some, like All Monsters Attack, I absolutely love them to death. I still have a lot of great things to say about most Godzilla movies, and I usually don't have that many things to complain about. But the most bottom of the barrel Godzilla you can watch, in my opinion, is the anime movies and the series. Those are just awful, in my opinion, and while they have some interesting things and ideas, there's really not much to them there, in my opinion. TriStar's Godzilla from 1998 is a terrible Godzilla movie, but there are still things about that movie that are good, in my opinion. It's a good monster movie, but it's just not a Godzilla one. The reason I'm saying all of this is to really show where I fall in line with Godzilla fans. The 1954 movie I don't think is the best, nor is Shin Godzilla as amazing as everyone makes it out to be, in my opinion. They have their place, but I really have no one way I can go. I love Godzilla when he's goofy and when he's taken seriously as well. I even thought that the new -1 was the best one of the franchises put out in a long time.
But like with any franchise, you do have your stinkers, and honestly, I think the worst live action one is the 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters. Let me explain.
Now this might take a good solid minute to explain, but like everyone else, when Final Wars came out, there was this 10 long years of Godzilla drought. So when Legendary and Warner Brothers finally came out with their reboot of him in 2014, I was ecstatic. That 2014 movie has a lot of stuff that I adore and love, but in total, going back to it, you just want to see the Godzilla scenes. It's a great movie, sure, with impressive slow burn and build up for Godzilla, but it's a movie that you can watch once or twice, and I really never have to see it again. So when they greenlit a sequel and said that they were bringing in classic Toho monsters that haven't been seen since Final Wars, that was amazing. Ghidorah, Mothra, and Rodan were last seen almost 15 years ago, so I was excited. This was before they brought in Ghidorah for almost every single reboot of Godzilla or some reference, and we as fans had a justified reason to want them back. But now I just want some new monsters. That's why Godzilla and Kong is so appealing to me from the trailers. I'm constantly rolling my eyes now anytime people are brainstorming a sequel or a continuation of, say, Shin Godzilla or -1, and they're like, Ghidorah needs to come back because Ghidorah! Listen, I understand why Ghidorah is important, and one of my favorite Godzilla films has him in it. He's like Green Hill Zone or Chemical Plant Zone to Sonic. There's a reason those are in almost every single Sonic game because they're iconic and people recognize them. Same applies to Ghidorah. He is the Joker to Godzilla. But as someone who grew up with the franchise, I want there to be some new foes finally. This is the thought process I have now as compared to when they first announced this movie. Like I said, I was with everyone else. We see monsters, we clap. The development for the movie almost began right when the 2014 movie opened. Legendary greenlit the sequel after the $130 million opening weekend. And later that same year, there was a teaser at Comic-Con with the Legendary confirming that they had the rights to Rodan, Mothra, and Ghidorah.
Toho's been great to us, and now we have more monsters to play with, and we're excited about it.
During all of this, Gareth Edwards was still confirmed for him returning with directing a trilogy of films. But after a few pushbacks from a 2018 to 2019 release date, Gareth Edwards left to focus on smaller projects after Rogue One. Michael Dougherty instead was brought in to direct after a small meeting in which he said, quote, "Yes, that was my reaction very, very quickly. I felt flattered, honored, and that continues to this day. It was a dream come true and lots of pressure. Immense pressure," unquote. He's more so known for writing than directing, but he had 2 movies under his belt, Trick or Treat and Krampus. Before the movie came out, I remember practically listening to every interview from him, and I remember thinking, man, this is a Godzilla fan. He was referencing stuff only true fans would know about.
Yeah, I think there was one previous film where a person climbed onto Godzilla and tried to shoot him with a handgun.
Around this time, too, when they were announcing all these new films, it was announced as well that Kong Skull Island was to be joined in the new shared cinematic universe with Godzilla, and the story would follow more of the Monarch branch. And it would all culminate in a rematch of Godzilla and Kong. I was so excited it wasn't even funny. Stuff that I wanted to see happen again was happening. And when that first trailer came on July 21st, 2018, oh man. You can quote me by saying this: Godzilla King of the Monsters has the greatest trailers ever edited. Everything about the marketing here was brilliant. How the music used soft melodies like Clair de Lune or Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Just some of the best edits in a trailer. The only bad thing is, in my opinion, is that the trailers gave most of the monster action away. And that is no exaggeration. I would say that the wait for Godzilla King of the Monsters was long, but not really for me. We had movies like Kong Skull Island, Shin Godzilla, and... Sorry, I think I choked on something there. 2019 with movies was kind of a blur for me. I forgot that 2019 was the year of How to Train Your Dragon ending, Ford v Ferrari, Shazam, Jumanji, Peanut Butter Falcon, and Avengers. And it was only 5 years ago. And of course, you had Godzilla being a major summer tentpole movie. Released on May 31st, 2019, I saw it opening weekend, obviously, and the whole time I sat in the chair just confused. I liked this, right, I would say? Or I was waiting for the end fight to hit that makes the movie worth it. There are things that I love about this movie, obviously, and I'll get to those. But in total, I walked out of the theater feeling the most disappointed I have felt for a movie in quite a while. Not embarrassed like, just confused. Before I say my thoughts, if you like this movie, that's fine. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. But for me, when this movie dropped and fans were like, oh, the critics don't know what they're talking about. This is for the fans. It's the best Godzilla movie ever. I was standing there in the back of the room scratching my head at what I missed. There's a lot of problems that I have, and I think I'll start with Godzilla, like I said, I can go either way, serious or goofy. Godzilla has been both since the very beginning. As long as the movie is entertaining and engaging enough, I don't really care. This movie, I don't know what they were trying to do, but it's serious sometimes.
Are you recording this, Dan? I record everything, man.
Let me be very clear. I hate the character Dr. Stanton. Some scenes are brilliantly built up, only for the writing to take a nosedive with his stupid comedy. Nothing against the actor, but man, the writing just sucks for him.
Open the shields.
Oh, yeah, sure. Let's bring him in for a beer.
I'm there constantly rolling my eyes anytime he opens his mouth, or I'm just cringing super hard. He ruins everything.
My God.
Godzilla has had serious movies with funny moments or characters, but it was never trying super hard with the previous ones. That's how this character comes off to me, and it ruins the tone in a lot of ways. I'm not saying that you can't do that. You have it where in Pacific Rim with Charlie, he was kind of the same way, but he was written a lot better. But it's not just him. There can be this epic scene that can happen, only for the camera cut to the humans and be like, can you believe this is happening, right? I don't know who's responsible for this in the writing, but it's just awful. Okay, this will be just me beating a dead horse, but the human characters are bad in this movie. They're not terrible. In fact, I'd like to say that the first 20 minutes of this movie are fast and pretty well paced, but I could just care less about all of these characters. I don't mind the new cast. I think that it's well acted for the material that's given, but the stories are the most cookie cutter stuff. Why can't we delve a little more into how some of these characters felt losing their son? We get 4 lines about that, and it's almost never brought up again. Monarch Legacy of Monsters did a story like this way better later on. Even the established characters from the previous movies die, and I'm just sitting there feeling nothing. Even Dr. Shirazawa, which has a pretty good build-up, I just still feel no emotion whatsoever to this scene. It's kind of like when they killed off Superman in Batman vs. Superman. There hasn't been enough of an emotional connection with the audience yet to make this scene more impactful. It's a good scene, especially with how it ends, but it should have been used maybe a few more movies down to really hammer this home. I just don't think it works in this movie. Also, Millie Bobby Brown should have died like 10 times in this movie. There are so many scenes in this movie where information is given on a screen or a TV or an iPad. Seriously, what is this? Is this a Godzilla movie or a PowerPoint presentation? I'm not kidding too. If there's some cool object, we get it explained on an iPad. If there's character motivation, we're shown through a screen why her motivation makes sense. A monster fight might happen? Screen! The oxygen destroyer. We just see a mock-up of it and nothing more. This is just baffling how many times they do it here. If it was once or twice, it's no big deal, but it's done so many times throughout the movie. It's lazy, irritating, and makes cool moments uninteresting. Yes, all of these complaints that I'm saying, though, apply to other MonsterVerse movies as well, but at least they're more interesting there, and I'm not bored as I am here. Alright, let me explain just a little bit of what I like with a fight scene. I like to see the fight. You can have parts that are maybe edited or tough to see what's going on to emphasize the chaotic nature of it or maybe how a character is feeling, but not every time. Godzilla King of the Monsters has the worst fights ever put in a Godzilla movie. And the thing is, they're not bad on paper. I love the idea of going back to a 2v2 style fight that was something in like Final Wars or Megalon, or having it where there's an Antarctica battle or even a water battle, but you have to shoot them and edit them properly. I want to know what's happening. Almost every single fight suffers from this in this movie. The camera is shaky and all over the place. There's almost always some filter to try and hide the terrible CGI. I don't mind the blueness that comes into frame when Godzilla approaches. It's sort of like a calling card. But it's done so poorly that I just want to take a rag and try to wipe off what's on my screen. I will say though that the monsters do show up more than the 2014 movie and it's spread across better. Usually anytime I'm getting bored, Godzilla or one of the other monsters comes in the frame. The bad thing is that you don't see them for more than 5 frames before it cuts back to a human. The teasing in this movie is worse than the 2014 movie. The part where Rodan and Ghidorah go to fight, it's built up so incredibly well, only for them to cut to the humans right when they clash, and we get it on an iPad. You can't keep doing this. I remember being so frustrated at that part in the theater. Something we have never before seen in Godzilla, where Rodan by himself takes on Ghidorah, and you tease us only to show us the after effect of it. The water fight that happens too after this has some of the worst CGI I have seen in a big budget movie. What am I even looking at here? I was so frustrated throughout the runtime when I was watching this in the theater. Godzilla movies, for the most part, don't have to have the best stories. Sometimes. If usually they're not there with the stories, you have the monsters to make up for it. Or even if the fights aren't the best, the story or the characters are engaging and interesting enough to keep the thing turned on or rewatching it. And this is the thought process I had. I maybe thought, hey, maybe they're saving everything for the last end fight, that final triumph when the last 30 minutes makes everything worth it. And did they do that? Nope, they botched it. The fight actually starts off awesome. The music booming, Godzilla coming in with his Heisei roar. Yeah, this is it. Let's do it, let's go, woo! Wait, you can't, no, stop, please, no! The whole fight is riddled with this. There is only 2 scenes that I can actually see in what's going on. The Mothra and the Rodan stuff is even worse too. There is so much happening on screen, you can't see it, and it's edited like a death metal music video. I think the reason that I'm so frustrated with this is because of other giant monster movies that were coming out before this Godzilla. Rampage, which I know you totally forgot about, was a forgettable story, but man, when the monsters were in it, they were there. You could see everything and it was magnificent. Shin Godzilla looked absolutely spectacular and you had wide shots, long takes, and it was edited where you could see the destruction and all that good stuff. The stuff that you came there for. Even TriStar with their movie. You saw Godzilla when he was there. I hate comparing different Godzilla movies to each other because they're all so different. But this is what frustrates me the most about King of the Monsters, and it ruins the entire experience for me. There are things done in this movie that would please a longtime fan of Godzilla like myself, but when I cannot see or tell what's going on, what do you want me to say? I can have it where your stories or your characters aren't there. Maybe they're not the best and they're just disappointing. But if Godzilla, the thing that I paid my $12 to see, isn't there, I'm disappointed. And I'm gonna notice the other bad things in your movie, like I previously mentioned. Okay, let's talk about the good. The attention to detail with the monsters is amazing. I love the new designs for all of the kaiju, except Godzilla's feet. I love the elephant stompers that he had in 2014. I also like that he uses every roar from every era. It's not just the MonsterVerse roar. His spikes also look more like the Showa and the Heisei era as well. His atomic breath got changed to look more powerful too, which I actually liked his mist breath that he had in the previous movie, but I get it. Godzilla's always going to be evolving more as the MonsterVerse goes on, just like how the other Godzilla eras did as well. I think Mothra here has my favorite redesign. I like that it has the colors of the original orange and the more bluish Rebirth of Mothra style as well. I also appreciate that they made her more wasp-like, because Mothra's always kind of been a little silly in my opinion.
Mothra was daunting, I have to admit. There was a minute where I wasn't sure if there was a cool way to do Mothra, because it's a giant moth.
Other than a few powers, she's technically useless in a fight and can get demolished by Godzilla easily, except for a few exceptions. So the new design with the praying mantis legs and the stinger just gives her more of a chance, and I really like this. It's too bad that she's hardly in the movie though. It was a little weird for me for Mothra to have this established symbiotic relationship with Godzilla. Mothra has always been more of a villain to Godzilla more than an ally. So I thought it was weird at first, but you know, it works here and I like it actually. She also did what she did in GMK, but for Godzilla this time, and I like that. Rodan, I think, got the short end of the stick with most scenes, but I like his design, how it takes little notes from every incarnation of him, and how they pulled from the original Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monsters, where Rodan emerges from a volcano. I think it's kind of cool too that this design always has him on fire. While in the fights, I think it's another thing that adds to the fights just having a bit too much going on. I like it in the design. It's sort of the next step of Fire Rodan almost. Ghidorah obviously is the one that's treated with the most respect here. Even though he's not my favorite kaiju, you can tell that with the backstory and how the design looks, you can tell how everyone loved Ghidorah on the production team. I like how for a good majority they call him Monster Zero as well. It's just another great callback to the history there.
Monster Zero. Command all units to take defensive position.
He also shoots lightning because that's Ghidorah. There's no stupid explanation behind it. He just does it. I also like how there's this different personality for each head, with the middle one being the leader. I don't really have that much to say because it's good. Everything with the monsters is done with respect and shows how much Doherty loved Godzilla. Just when it comes to when they decide to show them on screen, that's when I'm not a fan of it. I think mostly the movie has good ideas, but just in execution is not good at all. I love the idea of how the Earth's environment changes after a monster attack, and there are people who believe in this cause. I just don't think it was executed well. Ghidorah summoning storms is a cool concept, I just don't like that it's the superstorm with 50 tornadoes. Here's the thing, however. This movie has some amazing shots. They're all trailer shots, but they're still really cool. I also think that the first 30 minutes of this movie is good and it flies by. It just starts to slow down after that Antarctica battle to a crawl, in my opinion. The pacing is just not good. Some parts I'm dying to let breathe a little, and others I'm begging to fast forward. Luckily, we got a pretty amazing soundtrack, at least by Bear McCreary. He used a lot of the original themes and evolved them too. As a fan too, it was a treat to hear a rendition of Blue Oyster Cult's Godzilla in the credits. I'm just not a fan of the singer's voice. Godzilla King of the Monsters is a weird movie for me to discuss because it's something that I wanted to love. There are a ton of references and Easter eggs, and it shows that this was made for the hardcore Godzilla fans such as myself. But with the problems that I had, this is a movie that I would personally skip, and I think that it's probably one of the worst Godzilla movies made. This is just my personal opinion. If you like this one, or maybe this is what got you into the franchise, great. I just wanted to share my personal thoughts on the movie and the mixed feelings that I have of it. Godzilla King of the Monsters opened to a poor reception from critics, and while I tend to be one of the people that's like, yeah, down with the critics, they're mostly right about this one in my opinion. This movie was a box office disappointment as well, with it only making $387.3 million. That's a lot of money, but when just your production budget is almost $200 million, and that's not including the promotional cost and the percent that the movie theaters get, yeah. This number was not good. At this point, Godzilla King of the Monsters is the lowest grossing MonsterVerse film, and honestly, I think my reasons are a good explanation as to why. It had a perfect time to open. The only competition was Rocketman and the after effects of Aladdin. Listen, I love the MonsterVerse. It's what brought back Toho to making their versions of Godzilla, and I think the idea of another Godzilla shared universe is awesome. The Showa era was that, and I can't wait to see what's next in the MonsterVerse. But for me, Godzilla King of the Monsters will remain forgettable, messy, and an extremely flawed film.
And the people are just gonna love what I have to say about All Monsters Attack.